Welcome, everyone. I am so grateful that you're here today. My name is Stella Grizont, and today we're going to be talking about how to stay sane while working from home during the COVID pandemic. So for those of you who don't know me, hello. And I see the numbers are rising in participants. So maybe I'll give it a second before I go into everything. So while everyone is joining and the numbers are growing, I'd love to hear from you first, actually. For those of you who are here, I'd love to know, do you have a child at home that you're homeschooling or taking care of? If that's you, go ahead in the chat function and just say yes. Okay, no children, I live alone. Good to know, Bob. That was my second question. Okay, lots of parents here. This is helpful context for me. Great. Okay. So great. And then how many of you are here who are actually isolating alone? Who's isolating alone? I'd love to see that. Okay, some folks isolating alone. That's also really, we all have this collective experience, but also it looks so different for so many of us, right? Having a child versus isolating alone, having a dog, right? Some people, do you have any family living with you? Maybe your parents or other folks living with you? Yes, one parent I'm seeing. Okay. Yeah, so there's a lot of a lot of stuff going on for all of us, right? Thank you for sharing. Great. All right. Yeah, so there's a lot going on for each of us, and it's all different. But also, we are having a collective experience of maybe some grief, of anxiety, of sadness, of longing for the way things were, of just being able to hug someone who you haven't seen in a really long time. And now we're all working from home, who can work from home, the privilege of working from home, right? Because we know so many have already lost their jobs. So here we are trying to work from home while taking care of children, our elderly parents, or just trying to manage the loneliness of just being all alone. So thank you so much for joining me today. I just want to confess that I have written this presentation over many, many times since I have originally spoken with Happify. And the reason why I keep writing it over and over again, well, there's two reasons. One, this is like the third or fourth time I'm presenting it. So I'm learning from you in terms of what I need for my audience. But also, each day is so different with the news and with the onset of tips and content that you're getting. So go ahead and let me know if you're feeling a little overwhelmed with all the tips that you're getting, right? You can raise your hand if you know where to find that function. It's when you click on the participant button, you can see there's a hand. I'm seeing, yes, the hands are rising exponentially. We're at like over 100 hands. The hand thing cannot move fast enough. Okay. Yeah. So I'm equally feeling overwhelmed with the amount of tips coming my way. And so I really dug deep in trying to think of how can I be best of service to you to set you up to be resilient, to help you navigate this really challenging moment while trying to be productive and like keep your family going. So what I decided to focus on and what we're going to be focusing on today is on helping you amplify your mental reserves and your resilience. So there's a lot of tips on how to organize your workspace, on how to manage your time, on how to schedule your kids. I'm not going to go into any of that because if you cannot focus enough and be able to manage your mind, then none of those tips are going to work, right? If you can't sit down and focus, if you can't manage the emotions that are swirling through your head, then you're just going to self-sabotage. So I want to get to the root of what we need in order to be productive, in order to be loving, in order to survive this moment. And that's going to be to start with our mind. And how do we manage our mood and our mind? Does that sound good to you? Okay. All right. So what I would like, okay, great. Thank you. Thank you, you guys. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. And the first thing I want to say about resilience is that resilience is ordinary. It's not extraordinary. And you are resilient. Your children are resilient. Your loved ones are resilient. We are all way more resilient than we think we are. And resilience is just about your ability to bounce back from a challenging experience. So we're going to bounce back. I want you to just reference your own life, for example. How many of you here have gone through a really devastating breakup? How many of you here have lost a loved one? How many of you here have gone through a major disappointment in your career, right? Have had a big failure. All of us have gone through something that's really challenging. And not only have we returned back to normal, we probably have even grown from the experience. Can I see some hands up from you would have never asked for the experience you got, but somehow you found a way to grow from it? Can I see some hands up for that? If that resonates. So what I want to emphasize for you all is that you will return to normalcy, to a level of normalcy, but I want to be here to help you make that return easier and to make your day-to-day easier. Because resilience isn't just about things going well. Resilience, when you're resilient, it doesn't mean that things are not hard. So things are still hard, right? And so if things are hard, it doesn't mean that something's wrong with you and that you're not handling it well. So I just from a show of hands, how many of you guys are finding yourself beating yourself up a little bit for maybe not being as productive as you want to be, or as on top of your kids' homeschooling schedule, or maybe the house is dirty and you're like, why can't I get it together? Is anyone here feeling that way? Do you find yourself judging yourself a little bit? Yeah. So what I want to just normalize for you is that going through negative emotions, especially during a pandemic, is absolutely normal. And if you weren't feeling negative emotions, I would be worried about the degree to which you're attuned to what's happening. Those negative emotions are actually helping you be cautious. If you weren't worried, maybe you wouldn't be washing your hands as much, right? So our negative emotions are actually there to serve us. But we want to know how to manage them so that we don't become a victim to our negative thinking. So what resists persists. And often what happens when we experience negative emotions is that we want to push them away. We want to push them away. We want to sweep them under the rug. We want to bottle them up, and we just want to act like everything is okay. And the problem with that is that bottling up your emotions and pretending to be happy is not good for your health, and it just makes those emotions stronger. It's not good for your health. We know from Harvard School of Public Health that it actually can increase your chances of premature death and cancer. We know from the University of Texas that it can actually make those emotions blow up even larger. So we really need to find a way to be with those negative emotions without suppressing them. So how do we do that? So one of the first tools I want to share with you is really simple, and it takes, I don't know, less than 15, 30 seconds, and it's to label your emotion out loud or in writing. To label the emotion you're experiencing out loud or in writing. By just labeling it, by just identifying what it is and saying it out loud or writing it out, what you're doing is you're diffusing its intensity. You're also giving yourself a way to deal with it because you can take action, specific action to deal with it, and you're improving your emotional intelligence. So what happens when we experience a lot of general anxiety? It's easy for us to say, I'm so stressed, or I'm so angry, or I'm so scared. And that's a good start. but I'm wondering if you could go even more nuanced. And so what I've included here is a simplified wheel of emotion by Dr. Plutchik, who organized basic emotions and then their kind of specific sons and daughters. And so if you just look at this wheel, it might start to give you some ideas on some nuance to what you're experiencing and to what you're feeling. So I want you to just go ahead and take a glance at this wheel and see if you can identify one emotion that you're feeling right now. And I'd love to see what those are. Can you guys go ahead and put those in the chat? Great. So there's a lot of worry. There's a lot of vulnerability, but I'm also seeing a lot of gratitude, love. Yeah. So what I want you to do is thinking about your negative emotion that you're experiencing right now. What's one thing that you might be able to do to feel a little bit less of it, right? So for example, if one of the things that you're feeling is lonely, what's one thing you can do to feel just a little bit less lonely? Is it FaceTiming with a family member or a friend you haven't talked to in a while? Maybe it's writing a letter to someone telling you how much you appreciate them. Maybe it's talking to your postal worker when they're delivering your mail from 6 feet apart, right? So the more specific we can label our emotion, we start to get clues on what we can do to relieve it. Equally, you can also pick an emotion that you want to amplify. So, for example, if you want to feel more gentleness or affection, or you want to experience more gratitude, you can also choose an emotion that you want to cultivate and see what actions you can take to do that. So the thing that I want to remind us all, and I don't have to remind you, this is our first pandemic, but I want to remind you that the first of anything is always really hard. And hopefully there's not another one of these. But it's the first time we're dealing with these circumstances. And so I want to encourage you to be gentle with yourself. So if you find yourself judging how you're doing, how you're letting your kids watch a little too much TV, or how the house isn't clean enough, or how you can't get it together to submit that report on time, I just want to invite you to be more compassionate with yourself. So what does it mean to be more compassionate with yourself? It's just about validating your feelings. So reminding yourself, this is new. Of course it's difficult, right? Think about a baby learning to crawl or to walk. It is stumbling, it is falling all the time. We've been stumbling through these weeks, but you may start to notice that you're getting into some sort of rhythm, right? Even if you're not in the ideal rhythm, you're learning every day how to be better and better at this. And so it's about reminding yourself, speaking to yourself in those terms. So saying to yourself, of course I'm feeling sad, or of course I'm feeling lonely. Those are normal feelings. But each day I'm learning more and more how to manage through this. Each day I'm learning how to be better in this situation. And it's the situation that sucks, not me, right? So we don't want to personalize the experience. Often when we experience negative emotions, we then start to feel bad for experiencing them. That's kind of like getting a root canal and then punching yourself in the face. So we don't want to do the punch, right? So we're already in pain. We don't need to amplify that pain. So the way that we kind of remove that second layer of self-inflicted punishment is by being gentle, changing the conversation we're having with ourselves in our own minds. So the thing that I want to remind you all of is just the basics. And I see on the chat that many of you are already doing that. Like Alice is saying, getting on a bike helps me with this. I do a lot of talking and praying while I spin. Awesome. So the basics are, what is it that keeps you going and puts you in self-care mode? A routine, meditation, Jennifer is saying. Calling loved ones, Donna is saying. Lauren is saying moving outside and video chatting with family. Elise is saying listening to music. So when you find yourself feeling off, just run through some questions. Did I sleep? Am I thirsty? Am I hungry? Am I hangry? Do I need to move my body? Do I need to get some fresh air? Do I need to listen to some music to remind me of who I am, right? So there are just some basic things that we can do that are not involved strategies, right? So I see a number of you are already talking about prayer and meditation, and that is an absolute must right now. Usually I'm a little, I'm more suggestive in my webinars, but I really want to emphasize that a meditation practice, and it doesn't have to be you sitting on a mat, but you're being quiet and really self-aware is a must right now. And it's a must not only for you, but it's a must for the people that you love, because our emotions are contagious. And if you're not able to plug into what's happening for you and to tend to that, you're also spreading that to the ones that you love, right? So it doesn't have to be sitting quietly, but that helps. That's why we do sit quietly, because it's a disciplined practice. Now, where can you go to learn how to generate greater inner awareness? Happify has a number of great courses on tracks for that. But also there's places like Headspace and Calm and Insight Timer. Those are all apps where you can go to download guided meditations. And I'm sure you guys in the chat, if you have other suggestions, feel free to send those through. But really sitting and noticing the thoughts that are moving through your mind. You don't have to entertain those thoughts. You can just notice those thoughts and let them keep floating by like the clouds that are just floating through the sky. You're like, oh, there's my grocery list. I'm going to let that go. I'm going to return to my breathing. Oh, there's my anxiety about when this will be over. I'm going to let that go, return to my breath. That's the practice. Now, it's easy to be overwhelmed with uncertainty and to assume the worst, right? So I don't know if any of you have found yourself going down the path of worst case scenarios. If you have, can I see a show of hands? I know I have certainly dabbled in that a little bit here and there. So if you are finding yourself going into what's called catastrophizing, which is a psychological term for when we are under stress, assuming the worst case scenario to protect ourselves, if you find you are doing that, then what I recommend, instead of ruminating on what could go wrong, is to focus on what is true right now in the present moment. What is true right now? So we only have this present moment. That is the only thing that is real. We do not know what's happening in the next moment. We do not know what's happening tomorrow. We certainly didn't know that this was happening 2 months ago, right? So we couldn't have anticipated this situation. And equally, we might not be able to anticipate a beautiful new future, which is as equally possible as maybe those catastrophic thoughts that you're having. So what I'd like each of you to do right now is to make a list of what is true in this moment for you that brings you comfort. So for example, I know I am healthy. I know my family is safe at home. I know I have a job. Now, these might not be yours. Maybe yours is, I know I have a roof over my head. I know that there is food in my refrigerator, or I know I have internet access, right? So I want you to go ahead and please go ahead and share what those are, because it's helpful for us to see that. So Elise says, I still have my job. What else is true for you guys? that brings you comfort. My family and friends, says Lawanda. We are healthy, says Patricia. Jody says, I am not alone. Great. I have a beautiful partner. I am able to help others. Beautiful, you guys. Yes. Awesome. And so what I'd also love to see from you is when you do plug into what you know to be true in this moment, notice the sensations of your body and just what happens in your mind when you just focus on what is true right now. Can you share what you're noticing about yourself by just stating what is true right now? Ingrid said she feels calmness, tranquility. I'm seeing positive feelings. Emma, someone saying my shoulders are relaxing. Paula saying I feel focused. Joy saying I'm feeling soothed. Gratitude. Marcus saying calm and optimism. Yes. And how long did that take you guys? That took us less than 30 seconds. So notice how quickly you can help your shoulders drop, how you can create some calmness for yourself. The thing about our emotions is that they are always changing. And so we have an opportunity every moment to shift our attention, to control our attention. And so by just focusing on what is true in the present moment, you can start to amplify your positive emotions by just simply directing your attention to right here, right now. Okay? And that we just did in 30 seconds. The other thing I want to share about uncertainty is that it doesn't always have to be scary. So the reason why it tends to be scary is because we have something called a negativity bias. And our negativity bias is our brain's natural instinct to pay attention to anything that is bad, wrong, or threatening. And that's Velcro to our attention. So naturally, our attention leans towards the negative stuff. So we have to override that natural leaning and bring it over to the other side, okay? Now, why do we have this negativity bias? We have it because our cavewomen ancestors who were all alone in the middle of the wilderness had to be on constant alert for threat. So if there was a rustling behind them in the bushes, they didn't have the luxury of assuming it was just a bird, okay? The people who assumed it was just a little bird probably got eaten by some prehistoric animal. But the people who assumed the worst, who believed that uncertainty was bad for them, they ran away and they survived another day. And those are our ancestors, okay? So we've inherited this disposition of tagging uncertainty as bad. But we've also inherited another instinctual response. And so I want to encourage you to do that, to use that. The other flip side of it, which we also have in spades, is play. So just like we have a negativity, a bias, we also have a playful mindset. And play is an instinctual response for us as well. If you think about the unknown, at times it is very scary, but at times you eagerly jump into it. When you want to travel to a new destination, when you want to eat a new dish, when you want to meet a new person, when you want to watch a new movie, you're excited. You're leaning into something because you're excited to learn or explore or expand yourself. So we can lean on our playful disposition to stay light in these circumstances. And let me show you how. I know you're probably thinking like, how am I supposed to be playful right now? Let me show you. It's really, really simple. It's just about how you talk to yourself in your mind, right? So all of this is about how am I managing my mind? How am I plugging into my greater awareness to direct my thoughts? And so here is one example. If you find yourself feeling obligated, like, ugh, I have to go wash the dishes for the third time today, right? Then I want you to just switch that feeling of obligation to a sense of opportunity. I get to wash the dishes for the third time today because I'm home and I'm safe and I'm here with my family, right? So And exactly, Jesse says, that means you have food to eat, right? Great call, Jesse. So I want you to just take a moment. Where is there a sense of blah obligation where you're feeling heavy, like I have to? And I want you to turn it into I get to. So let me see some of your I get to statements. Now, while you guys, I get to work, right? I get to work from home. I get to help my kids, right? I have a job, right? I get to listen wow, these are moving so fast, you guys. I'm loving all the participation. I get to hang out with my family. I get to bake cookies, right? Beautiful, beautiful. I get to take my dog out for a walk. So when you notice you're doing that small shift, what is that? What is the sensation that comes from you just shifting from I have to I get to? Just notice that in your body. Cece's saying, I'm grateful. It gives me hope, right? There's gratitude in there. It's freeing, right? There's lightness. Again, that took you less than 30 seconds. Now here's another one. This sucks, right? It's when you're judging a situation. This sucks. It's when you feel a sense of dread, right? So instead of saying this sucks or this is going to be a horrible day, can you ask yourself, or can you infuse it with a little bit of curiosity and say, I wonder how I will be surprised. I wonder how this day is going to surprise me. You know, sometimes when I'm laying there in bed and I feel like I had a rough night's sleep. I'm just like, I just want to go back to bed. And I'm like, oh, this day, right? So what I will do, and I force this, right? It's not like it's not like, yay, I want to say this to myself in the middle of my grumpiness in the morning, but I will force that little crack of light, that 1% opening of like, well, maybe this day will surprise me. So all you need is a little sliver of possibility, a little sliver of willingness to see it differently. And that's all you need sometimes, just a tiny sliver of willingness to see it differently. Great. So the next one, and I love this one, is when you notice yourself complaining. And this happens almost every time if someone asks you how you are. And I noticed this in the beginning. I just kind of would take a breath like, well, and then kind of launch into all the struggles that I was having. And so I caught that. And one of my colleagues gave me this really lovely tool to start with fortunately. So instead of saying, oh man, homeschooling is so hard, and now I'm trying to squeeze 8 hours of work into 3.5 hours with lots of interruptions, I start with saying, you know what? Fortunately, we are healthy. Fortunately, we have food. Fortunately, we get so many sweet hugs from my daughter all day long. Fortunately, she is doing well, right? So I started off that way. And that really puts me on a different trajectory in that conversation. It also puts the other person on a different trajectory. So when you're thinking about your work meetings, this is one where I like to start off with a note of gratitude. Or if someone asks you how you're doing, just start with the fortunately. This is a really simple reframe that can really be contagious amongst everyone and lift up spirits. So with that, I want to help you recognize that there is choice. So what I'm trying to emphasize with each of these tools is that you have choices in just how you direct your attention. And so the more that you do that mindfulness practice, what it does is it opens up the gaps in between your thoughts so you can actually see where a choice is emerging. So the more that we can see our choices, the more control we feel over our situation, the more conscious we are when making deliberate choices that support our mental well-being and our ability to focus. So with that, let's talk about how you can have even more control and take advantage of the choices you're having. So I could do a whole webinar on how to set healthy boundaries. But what I want to do just to give you, just open up the open up the awareness of like, where are there choices that maybe you're not completely where are some choice points that you have to make things a little bit easier for yourself, to support your well-being, to support your feeling more calm. So for example, one of the things I noticed with myself is, because I'm watching my daughter during the day, my husband and I are taking shifts. It's not perfect. But what I found is that to make up for what I needed to do, I was working late a lot. And working late many days in a row would just leave me feeling very rattled and scattered, and just I didn't feel like I could be my best self the following day. Or I kind of had like an emotional hangover. So I chose, that's it, at 6 o'clock, I'm cutting things off. And so what I'm choosing to do is actually take time on the weekends to work, so that at least in the evenings I can turn off. So this is forcing us to be more creative. It's also forcing us to say no. So just today I told a colleague of mine, you know what, I'm going to call it quits on this presentation for this week, and I'm going to hand this back over to you, and I'm at my limit right now. But here's what I can offer. So we really have to be vigilant of where we need to say no, because saying no is about saying yes to something greater. So sometimes when we people please and we do things out of obligation, or we think we have to, or someone's going to be so disappointed if we say no, when we do that, we're actually denying a bigger yes. And that bigger yes could be your mental well-being, your ability to focus, to be productive, your ability to serve in a greater capacity. So I just want to offer you just a scan throughout your day, and to consider, where might there be opportunities for me to say no, so that I could say yes to my overall mental well-being. Okay. So when we acknowledge that we have choices, and when we actually make those choices, when we have those simple wins, it's so important for our overall sense of control. Now, in order for us to amplify our resilience, which you can, we're learning how to amplify our resilience right now. Like, we're all resilient, and we can become even more resilient, and we can learn how to be more resilient. These are all skills that are learnable. One of the drivers that helps you be even more resilient is your sense of control. And by you making conscious choices, you are actually expressing your control over your circumstances. You cannot control what's happening with the virus. You cannot control what's happening in the economy. You can't even control what's happening with your family and friends. But what you can control is what's within your universe right now, and especially where you direct your attention. So what I'd like you guys to do is just to acknowledge your simple wins each day. By acknowledging your simple wins, what you're doing is you're participating in what I call the virtuous trifecta. So the virtuous trifecta is the key to us feeling a sense of control, but also to feeling purposeful each day. And first, it starts with being aware. What is it that's even important to me? What is important to me? What are the things that are most important that I experience each and every day? And then you make conscious choices to do that. So making sure the dog goes for a walk, right? Getting fresh air for myself, exercising for 10 minutes, meditating for 3 minutes, FaceTiming a family member. So making sure that my team is okay and not overloaded. What are those things that are very important to you? So getting clear on those, and then making conscious choices to actually do those things. Now, where most of us fall off is appreciating that we're making those choices. We don't give ourselves a pat on the back. And that is the part that most of us forget because we don't think it's important, but it's actually essential. If you are not appreciating all the stuff you're doing, then it's easy to feel like you're out of control. but actually you have more control than you think. And by doing a daily check-in and acknowledging your simple wins, you will amplify that. This is the key to your going to bed with more peace and more pride, and with your feeling a sense of purpose each and every day, despite what is happening around you. I can't emphasize this enough. So I would love to see, what are your small wins, you guys? I see Kathy saying getting dressed like you're going to work. Christina's saying making your bed. Ingrid is saying cooking a healthy meal, getting sleep. Showering, absolutely. Walking the dogs, eating breakfast, doing my facial care routine. Yes, that is great. Drinking water, makeup and hair. Yes, all of those things, taking my vitamins, doing my gratitude journal. I'm loving these, you guys. Awesome, awesome, awesome. So take a moment right now to jot down what those are for you, and just notice, what is the impact of you capturing these small wins? I'd love to hear from you. Like, what are you noticing by just capturing these small wins? How is it making you feel? What are you noticing in your body? Calmer, less overwhelmed. Jillian is saying, I feel a sense of accomplishment. Rosemary is saying, I feel better about my day. Catherine, a sense of accomplishment. Elena says it makes her feel more productive, and not feeling like I've wasted my day. Kathy says it makes me feel semi-normal. Great. Barbara says it feels like I'm taking back some control. Kelly, feeling connected. I'm more relaxed, but also more energetic, says Nancy. Maria says self-love. George says less stressed, productive. Yes, you guys, this is the key. You're already doing so much. It's just about acknowledging it. And the thing is, when we're not in our workspaces, that's where we get a lot of acknowledgement. And so now that falls on you. But this is actually something I do with my coaching clients all the time, is we really dig into what is it that's most important to you? What is it that you really want? How can you make conscious choices? And how are you giving yourself feedback on that every day? Again, I just want to point out, this took less than 30 seconds. And again, you're feeling a sense of accomplishment, productivity, purpose, glimmer of hope I'm seeing. Jody says pure joy. Oh my God, I love it. Dana says less cranky. Jody says, I feel in charge. That is exactly what this is meant to do. So beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. Let me check the time. How are we doing? Oh, yes, we're great. So now, one of the things that's most important, so what we talked about is how to manage the mind, right? How to manage your negative emotions, how to amplify your resilience. But it's equally as important to intentionally generate positivity, right? To intentionally generate positive emotions. And so I want to share with you a study that is super important for right now. And it's about how your mood impacts your immunity. So Sheldon Cohen did with her colleagues did a study in 2003 where they quarantined a group of folks, and they infected them with the common cold. And they had a solution of the common cold of about 15%. So not everyone that they gave the swab of the common cold to was expected to get it. So they literally like swabbed the germs on something and then put it up people's noses. And then they wanted to see who would get this cold. And what they asked folks before they were swabbed was about their mood and about their mindset. And what they found is that the folks who had a pretty good week the week before, had a lot of positive affect, which is saying they were in a positive mood, 25% of those people got infected. And then we know from the people who were in a more negative place, 75% of those got infected. So our mood plays a very big role on our immunity. And so what you notice throughout this webinar is in multiple instances, you yourself were able to amplify your positive emotions by just doing these tiny exercises. Our emotions are, again, constantly moving. So by directing your attention on what is true in the present moment, by directing your attention on your small wins, by directing your attention on like, how can I be more curious? You are putting yourself into a more positive place, and you're actually supporting your immunity. So right now, this is especially important. So one simple way you can do this, and I know you know this one, is just by practicing gratitude, straight up gratitude. So we've done different versions of this, but just directly, I want to hear, what are you grateful for right now? Go ahead and share that with me. And I want you to share 3 things, because if we were to write down 3 things we're grateful for every day for 6 weeks, we would amplify our general life satisfaction. We reverse signs of depression. We can actually diminish the sensation of aches and pains. This is what we know from the research. So by practicing gratitude, we do good for our body, we do good for our mind, and we also do good for others, because that stuff spreads. So what I'd like to do is just recap the tools, and then I'm going to open it up for some questions. So today we talked about when you're feeling negative emotion, the importance of labeling it so that it gives you direction on what you can do to make yourself feel a little bit better. And it also reduces the intensity of the emotion. We talked about giving yourself some compassion. This is the first time we're in a pandemic. We're not going to get it right. It's going to take us time to learn how to manage the situation. A reminder to go back to basics, right? Getting your walk, drinking your water, having nutritious food, and getting your sleep. And of course, mindfulness, to practice having some stillness and noticing what's happening for us. And when we're feeling like we're spinning out of control and in fear-based thoughts and assuming the worst, we talked about focusing on what you know to be true right now. Then we talked about how uncertainty doesn't always have to be scary. Uncertainty can actually feel light, right? By using our play mindset. Instead of I have to, I get to. Instead of this sucks, I wonder how I might be surprised, right? Then we talked about how we have choice and how it's important to recognize that you have choice. This gives you a sense of control, and how maybe there are some places you might want to start looking at, where am I saying yes and where might I want to say no? Then we talked about the importance of acknowledging simple wins so that you recognize how you do have control over your own mindset and over your own circumstances, right? And how, actually not over your own circumstances, but over your own experience of those circumstances. And then finally, we talked about gratitude. So these are a lot of tools that I shared with you today. And I should have said this in the upfront. I don't expect you to be practicing all of these at once. In fact, because you're taking on so much new stuff, I would only encourage you to choose one for this week. Now, if you want these tools, and you know, obviously if you're taking notes, great, but I can send you a recap of this webinar in a PDF form with easy, in kind of a Word document. So everything's written out for you in a few pages to make it easy for you to remember all of this. So if you would like that, you can go to remoteandresilient.com. I'm typing that into the chat. But I want you to just choose one and tell me which one you're choosing. And then what I'd like to do is read you this beautiful piece by David Brooks from the New York Times, an excerpt from his piece in the New York Times, which I find very inspiring. Viktor Frankl, writing from the madness of the Holocaust, reminded us that we don't get to choose our difficulties, but we do have the freedom to select our responses. Meaning, he argued, comes from 3 things: the work we offer in times of crisis, the love we give, and our ability to display courage in the face of suffering. The menace may be subhuman or superhuman, but all we have the option of asserting is our own dignity, even to the end. I'd add one other source of meaning. It's the story we tell about this moment. It's the way we tie our moment of suffering to a larger narrative of redemption. It's the way we then go out and stubbornly live out that story. The plague today is an invisible monster, but it gives birth to a better world. So in our challenges today, we can make meaning. We can show up and be the people we want to be by asserting control over our own minds and our moods. That will help us focus, to help us be better for those around us. And so what I'd like to offer each of you is a gift of my time to talk with you specifically about your plan for how you want, if you want to use this as a time where you want to be self-reflective, where you are really willing to look and see where you might need to let go or do something new, or grow in certain ways that maybe you've been kind of pushing off, then I would certainly, I would encourage you to reach out and we can talk about a specific plan for you on how you can best navigate this moment, but also set yourself up for success when we're through it. So if you're interested in that, you can go to meetwithstella.com. And obviously I can't do this for everyone. So I encourage you, if this resonates, to go ahead and do that right now. Also, as I mentioned, I'm going to be sending you a cheat sheet of this webinar along with additional tools I didn't have a chance to get into. So you can register at remoteandresilient.com, and that way I will email you in the next few days your cheat sheet and additional tools or videos. I'm going to be doing a little bit of both. Okay. And also I want to remind you, and I want to thank Happify for having me today. Happify is an excellent resource with exercises and tools to help you be more resilient in this moment. And so one of the tracks I recommend is called Managing Stress in Uncertain Times. And so I would definitely check that out. And with that, I will take some questions. So let me go into, all right. So what are your questions, you guys? You can put them in the Q&A box, or you can go ahead and put them in the chat. So this is being recorded, Wendy, and it will be shared. Gil is asking for the quote. Yes, I can certainly put that back up. Okay. That's from David Brooks in the New York Times. All right, so Crystal asks, how can we help a family member who sees this as all doom and gloom? I worry about my sister's mental health. So if there is someone in your life, or if you feel fragile in this moment, it's very important to amplify positive emotion. But also, it's not about denying their experience. So it's a really delicate line to walk. And so what you might want to say is invite her and say, hey, one of the things I'm doing to stay positive is just noticing three things that I'm grateful for. Would you be open to starting our FaceTimes like that? And ask if she'd be willing, or if she'd want to give it a try, right? So you don't want to like force it. The other thing is just your presence and listening. You can say, oh, I'm so sorry that you're feeling this way. Of course, it's difficult. I totally get it. And what you can say is like, here's how I'm coping. Or you can offer like, hey, would you like me to offer you some suggestions, or would you like me to just listen? So you might want to ask, hey, what would be best? Sometimes people just need to share and be heard. So that also might be the case. But the thing is, you just can't force them into doing anything, right? But the best thing you can do is just to lead by example, right? So letting people know you're joining a webinar like this, or leading the whole family through an exercise. Okay. How do we support others who are struggling emotionally and mentally through this? Okay, I just shared that. Patricia, do you have any tips? Okay, a lot of questions on how do we get others, right? Because we're very much worried about other people, and I totally understand. So I would lead by example, and I would invite them gently into, some of these tips or webinars. You can say, hey, like, is there a way I can support you? What would be helpful? Just talking? Would you like me to share resources, some tips that I'm learning? Just start getting curious about what's the format that they want to hear or receive this in. Okay. So Marlo is asking, what can we do when a shift in perspective is harder to do on some days? The first thing I would do, Marlo, is to do the labeling exercise. So if you're noticing you're in a really grumpy mood, just call it out. I'm feeling X, Y, and Z. I'm feeling resentful that I'm in this situation. I'm feeling lonely. I'm whatever it is, just call that emotion out, right? And then what I would do is notice where it is in your body. So again, you're really just enhancing your awareness. Where is it sitting in my body? Okay, it's sitting in my chest. Consider maybe breathing into that area, getting some deep breaths into that area. And then when you're ready, gently, I would go into some self-compassion or gratitude. And I admit all the time that I fake gratitude frequently, you guys. Even though I teach people how to work happier and live better. By the way, I totally didn't tell you what I do, but I've been coaching for over 15 years, and I help leaders work happier and live better. I work with organizations like Google and Johnson & Johnson to help elevate employee well-being and engagement. And I tell folks all the time when I speak at organizations or wherever, I fake gratitude. You're not always going to feel like doing this stuff. And so what I suggest is you just do it anyway. It's kind of like showing up at the gym. I don't feel like going to the gym every day, but I drag myself there. And then once I'm there, I start to feel better. And so sometimes you have to go beyond the 3 gratitudes because they might not be hitting the spot. You might not feel the effects of the gratitude by just writing 3. So keep writing until you start to feel some softness in your chest. Make it a free writing exercise, right? Write for 20 minutes nonstop. Don't let your pen get off the paper, or don't stop typing. So it's like, I'm grateful for the sunny weather. I'm grateful that I have heat. I'm grateful that I have food. I'm grateful that I have internet, and just keep going. And eventually you will feel the softness. Eventually you will feel the shift, but it does take a little bit of navigating. All right. I'm reading questions. What are some good tips to calm your brain down at night if you're having trouble stopping the worry long enough to fall asleep? So, what I would do is really manage your news intake, or who you're talking to about events. So, if there are people that you talk to that just drill down to like and are catastrophizing all the time, try not to have those conversations, or try not to have them before bed. So really, just like you manage the food you eat and you maintain, hopefully, some sort of healthy diet. I know it's hard now with all the baking, but if you can monitor the content you consume like you monitor what you eat, right? And so it's okay to watch the news. It's important to know what's going on, but you don't need to watch the same story 10 different ways. So really cut down on your social media, because that's also a place where the news is being shared. Really cut down on the content that you're receiving so that you can start to calm down. There's also really great meditations you can listen to help you just do some deep relaxation. So body scan meditations, guided meditations are really great to listen to. Another app that I didn't mention, and I will in the handout, is it's the UCLA Mindful app. UCLA Mindful. I really love it. It's free. All of it's free. It's super simple. There's not a lot of choices. And it's by the UCLA Mindfulness Research Center. And they have body scans that are 3 minutes, 9 minutes, one right before bed. So I would do something like that where you're just leading your body through a relaxation exercise. This is a great question. How do you work on finding the balance between giving yourself some grace, which is allowing yourself to feel what you want, and holding yourself accountable to your wellness? I am really good at giving myself grace, but I'm having a hard time doing the other one. So what I would challenge you to do is to set reasonable expectations for what it means for you to be well right now, right? So maybe it's about experimenting. Okay, this and just taking tiny steps. So if normally you have an amazing morning routine and you're meditating and you're exercising and you're eating well and you're having water before you, like you're doing all these amazing things, and now suddenly you're homeschooling, or suddenly you have nonstop Zoom calls and you can't squeeze it in, then what I would do is reset your expectations this week and then build up to where you used to be. So just experiment. Okay, this week I'm just going to try to do a 2-minute meditation. That's all I'm going to commit to. And then that's a small win. You do it, it's a small win. And then you build up reserves and you find ways to choose more or choose again or stay the same the following week. Okay, let me just check. I have time for a few more questions. These are great questions, you guys. Thank you so much. And again, I will be sharing all this information on, I'll be sharing a recap of this and some more tools, and I'll also send you some other stuff at remoteandresilient.com. Okay. Sherry says, all the Zooming is tiring me out, but I don't want to say no. So I think what you can, I think you're not alone, right? Let me see a show of hands of how many people are Zoomed out, right? Yeah, a lot of people are Zoomed out. There's tons of hands going off. So the thing is, you might want to just speak up for yourself and say, hey, you guys, I'm a little Zoomed out. So I'm going to participate on this call without my camera on for this one call, right? Or consider what you have on deck. Are there some people you feel safer just being honest with and saying, hey, I just want to do this one on the phone, the good old fashioned phone. Would that be okay? So just speak up for your needs. I also think there's a lot more meetings happening now because we don't have those hallway conversations where we could update or make quick decisions and people don't want to be left out. So know that this isn't going to be forever, and regularly kind of raise that with your team. Like, we're still all trying to catch our breath, right? We're just trying to stabilize right now, but you might want to raise that question. Hey, I know we're all on a lot more calls and in meetings than we normally are. What might be some ways that we can start to prioritize or pull back? So just raise that with people you feel safe with. I'll take one last question. So Kathy asks, I feel guilty not being at my computer constantly for work. However, I have a teenager at home who is doing online learning for the first time. How do I balance? Kathy, that's such an important question. And I don't know if there's a right way to balance. It is really freaking hard. I struggle with this. Right before this call, I was doing a piano lesson with my daughter. Um, I was trying to get emails out. It's so hard. It is really, really hard. So what I would do is really make sure you're talking to your boss. Organizations don't have the answers yet. Some are developing some systems, but I think we're all trying to figure this out. So I would try to talk to your manager and say, I'm really having trouble doing both. And so I'm wondering if I can be on calls and be available online from, let's say, uh, 1 to 6, and I'll be offline in the morning, and then or online in the morning and then offline this time. People are doing that. So it really takes you having the strength to hold and maintain your boundaries and ask for what you need. This is about really having the courage to ask for what you need. And so this is actually an opportunity for all of us to get really plugged into what are the healthy boundaries we want to maintain? What is most important to us, and start acting in alignment with that, right? So with that, you guys, I want to thank you so much for being here today. And just thank you for playing. Thank you for contributing. Thank you for showing up. We're all in this together. And I know that through this, we all will be stronger. And I know that you have the tools. I know that you have the willingness. I know that you will find a way through this. And so I just appreciate your being here. Your being here is a small win for today. So reach out to me if you would like to talk. Again, you can go to meetwithstella.com, or you can email me your questions, stella@whoopa.com. And I'll do my best to get back to you. And with that, I just wish you a wonderful day and much health, and for you to be well and stay well. Thank you.